A man who cares about nothing but himself, and a man who stakes everything on the future. An immovable object versus an unstoppable force. The human incarnate of a chaotic force of nature versus an empathetic and proactive hero. Satoru Gojo and Regulus Corneus are two characters who boast insanely broken abilities for the universes they live in, and have been two characters to battle against the definitive strongest character in history relative to their own stories. In this video, I will pit these two practically untouchable characters against each other by going over their stats, abilities, and how I think the battle would play out. With that said, since I value the time of both you and I'll cut this intro short and get straight into the video. We'll be going over Regulus first, as I think this entire battle revolves around his two abilities, Little King and Lion's Heart. Lion's Heart is an ability that allows Regulus to stop the flow of time from having any effects whatsoever on his physical body. As the world and time itself move around him, his physical body is frozen in time. His heartbeat, breathing, everything like that is frozen, and not only this, all attacks, phenomena, anything in the world itself has no effect on him, because time on his body is frozen. It will always remain in the state it was frozen in, no matter what. Regulus cannot be soaked by water because his body was frozen in a state of being dry. He can't be attacked because his body is stuck and frozen at a completely different point in time to when all attacks will be launched at him. He doesn't need to eat, breathe, sleep, etc. because his body was frozen in a state where it was running and will always be frozen in that state. Regulus also has the ability to imbue anything he touches with this ability. He can pick up and throw people since they wouldn't be affected by the laws of the world while being thrown. Wind, gravity, etc. would not apply. He could throw you to the moon and call it a day. He's actually done this in ReZero before. Regulus can also use this ability to pick up grains of dirt and throw it at his opponents. Imbued with Lion's Heart, these tiny grains of dirt cannot be stopped by anything in the world and will shred their opponents into mist. Regulus can breathe and hit you with the might of a truck. Lion's Heart is absolutely unreal. Now, Little King is the ability that comes alongside Lion's Heart and makes it available to be used non-stop, as it can only be used for 5 seconds at max without the assistance of Little King. What Little King does is give Regulus the ability to place a quote-unquote heart inside of someone he believes to belong to him. As long as his heart beats, the cooldown on his Lion's Heart is being infinitely reset, and by proxy, it can be activated forever. Regulus puts this heart inside of one out of 100 plus wives, and if that wife severs her ties with Regulus by either passing away or being frozen, something that just stops their heart as well, it will move to another wife. If all wives are gone, then yeah, Regulus can't use his ability for more than 5 seconds. It's pretty broken with a glaring weakness, especially if you can figure it out. Subaru would figure out the weakness to Regulus' heart by displaying knowledge of the stars, understanding that Regulus' name literally means Little King and Heart of the Lion, how the outside world and objects interacted with Regulus' ability, and having Reinhardt confirm that Regulus' heart did not beat while his abilities were active. It took a lot, and it's a bit of a reach. Maybe it's not that much of a reach in Japan and they pay more attention to things like stars and stuff. I don't know, but Subaru figured it out this way. Anyway, Regulus without these two abilities is just a normal human at best, and there isn't much else to discuss. So let's move on to Gojo. Satoru Gojo is referred to as the strongest sorcerer in the modern era due to his immense strength and his curse technique, the Limitless. Due to Regulus' unique ability, his stats, and Gojo's limitless technique, there will be only 3 things relevant to Gojo when evaluating this matchup in my opinion: speed, intelligence, and Gojo's technique itself, the Limitless. Gojo or Regulus, if they can land a blow on one another, will decide the fight from there, so I don't think strength or durability are too important. First, Gojo is stated to be the fastest sorcerer of the modern era. This confirms that he's at least above Mach 3, as Curse Naoya was moving at Mach 3 and the story pretended like it was an insane feat, although it really wasn't in the grand scheme of things. We have also seen characters like Hakari somewhat dodge lightning point blank, not completely, but he moved fast enough to make sure that the lightning did not hit his head. Ryu Ishigori, a character on Hakari's level, was perception blitzed by Sukuna, who wasn't even at his full power. and Gojo is actually able to contend with Sukuna when he's at his full power. He's more than likely even faster than Sukuna when using Blue, as he can literally teleport with this ability and move so fast that he would make multiple after images while fighting Sukuna in chapter 231. Gojo is more than fast enough to dodge Regulus's attacks, and he's bare minimum supersonic level speeds. When it comes to Gojo's intelligence, Gojo is one of the most intelligent characters in the series. To even navigate and use the Limitless requires a lot of intelligence and skill at processing information. I'm also sure that Gojo has been stated to do literally anything he wants, even outside of fighting, so Gojo is without a doubt a genius. Gojo also has the ability to tap into Reverse Curse technique, and arguably has the best usage of it in the series. Gojo has managed to master this technique to a point where he can keep a circuit of it flowing through his body at all times in order to constantly keep his brain fresh, since using the 6 eyes in the Limitless like he does 24/7 would normally cook his brain. He also uses this to instantly regenerate the moment that anything ever hits him. Gojo also has enough finesse with this technique to swap in between this simple domain and Reverse Curse technique in order to survive the onslaught of Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine. He can also utilize this ability to regenerate his curse technique in the event that it's burnt out from using a domain expansion too much, although that won't be too relevant in this matchup here. Now for those who are new to Jujutsu Kaisen and are from my ReZero side of content, pay close attention because this is going to be a mouthful. Gojo's abilities are quite hard to understand. Even the author was confused by this ability when he first introduced Gojo to his series. Gojo's curse technique is the Limitless. The Limitless allows Gojo to manipulate space at an atomic level using his curse energy as a medium. There are 4 techniques that Gojo has displayed with the Limitless. First and foremost, the neutral state of the Limitless, Infinity. Infinity provides a barrier that, simply put, stops anything from ever reaching the target that is Gojo himself. It will endlessly cut the distance between the attacker and Gojo himself in half. But mathematically speaking, no matter how many times you cut something in half, it will never reach 0. Or in this instance of the technique, Gojo himself. Take a calculator and try to divide 1 by 2 until you reach 0. It's impossible. There's a little more to this technique, but most explanations I see of it drag it out, provide too much information, and end up confusing the viewer. So hopefully, I simplified it enough for you to pick it up. The only way to bypass the Infinity would be to use something that can nullify supernatural phenomena, or bypass the concept of space. The Infinity alone is an insane ability, but with that technique, Gojo is only getting started. Next up is Gojo's go-to technique, Blue. When Gojo amplifies the Limitless in negative space in really any area he chooses, he creates a void within the world. The universe immediately notices this void that should not exist and responds to it by creating an extraordinarily powerful pull force to instantly fill this void of space that Gojo created, using it to send his enemies flying at the most basic level. But this is Gojo we're talking about. Gojo can exploit this pull force created by Blue in multiple ways, using it to move his body to wherever he desires, in other words teleportation. He can also manipulate his speed to create after images rather than teleportation to confuse his opponent. Blue can also be shaped into multiple tiny spears and shot at his opponents to create negative spaces inside of them, as he did against Sukuna, these tiny orbs being able to remove parts of his body upon contact. Gojo can also use this technique to amplify his punches as displayed in his battles against Sukuna. He uses Blue to put the void of space between his fists and opponents, pulling both his fist and them toward the void in order to fill it, adding a lot more power to his punches by law of acceleration. There's also another variant of this technique, which is when it's launched at maximum output. This technique is a super amplified version of Blue that generates a massive field of attraction that continues after the initial pull, unlike normal Blue. It's almost as if it's a tiny black hole endlessly crushing everything contained in it to a pulp. Gojo can also move this technique while using it. He's also able to set this technique up by jabbing a small Blue inside of his opponent and then amplifying it. Moving on from Blue, we have 3 more techniques relating to the Limitless. When Gojo applies Curse Technique Reversal to his Blue, he inverts the properties of it. Instead of rapidly dragging everything toward a certain spot, he creates an orb with the purpose of pushing everything away from it with a ridiculous amount of force. This technique is Red, one that repels its opponents with so much power that it would send someone like Jogo flying across an entire forest. Jogo is somebody who can incinerate a city in seconds. Unlike Blue though, Red doesn't really seem to provide too much utility, only serving as a magnetic cannon at the atomic level. When combining both Blue and Red, Gojo can create and shoot an unstoppable spear that rips apart all matter at a molecular level. This is purple. This seems to serve as Gojo's finisher and most powerful technique. There really seems to be nothing that could withstand this technique head on. Gojo, when fighting against Sukuna, would be able to take this purple to a level higher than it already was, shooting blue and red separately and amplifying his blue using his chanting in order to drag the red into it and generate the unlimited hollow purple, a variant of purple that destroys all within its range, even Gojo himself. Lastly, Gojo has a domain expansion called the Infinite Void. A domain expansion in Jujutsu Kaisen works the same exact way that Owl's does in Re:Zero. It contains the targets within a space, and within this space, a sure hit, cannot miss attack or effect, will hit the opponent no matter what. Gojo's domain expansion has the effect of hitting his opponent with infinite, non-stop information. This usually results in anybody afflicted having their brain fried and entering into a state of shock, stunning them. The duration of the shock depends on how long they've been exposed to the domain expansion and how strong they are overall. With that said, I think I've covered all abilities that are relevant to the fight for the most part. The fight will be in the Re:Zero world, of course, as authorities do not work outside of it, and Regulus's wives need to be somewhere. So now, let's just get into the fight. I think that there are a few ways this can go, depending on multiple factors. The way I see Regulus versus Gojo going with them being in character and all, I think Gojo would be as arrogant as he usually is and end up trying to tank Regulus's attack that ignores all laws of the world, space included. This means that the infinite space that Gojo endlessly divides between him and his opponent will be a non-factor when it comes to Regulus. In other words, Regulus, if he's frustrated enough, will shred Gojo into bits with one attack and go about his day. However, knowing Regulus and how much of an idiot he is, I do think there's a chance that he doesn't shred Gojo into bits and gives him a warning shot like he did with Subaru. If this happens, I think Gojo will be able to easily regenerate and not make the same mistake again, refusing to allow Regulus to land any more of his attacks while fighting Regulus and attempting to figure out the deal with his ability. This is where we ask, could Gojo actually figure out Regulus's ability? To that I say yes, and with a bit of confidence. There's two major factors to my answer. One, Subaru is above average intelligence and figured out Little King without any redos. Gojo is implied by Gege Akutami to be a genius among geniuses, someone who can do literally anything he wants in the real world, so I think he naturally has some knowledge of the stars. 2. Gojo has a student named Kiara Hoshi, and her entire ability revolves around the Southern Cross constellation. Although it's not the same constellation as the Regulus star is in the real world, I think the 2 points combined, plus Gojo's overall battle intelligence and his ability to instantaneously teleport, make me believe that he has the ability to poke at Regulus for a while and eventually figure out his ability. If he does this, he can figure out the deal with the wives and wipe them quite easily and win. But I also think that this is the only scenario in which Gojo can actually win. He need a lot of luck. Blue, red, purple do absolutely nothing to Regulus. Infinite Void will not fry or damage Regulus's brain at all. Anything else is completely up in the air. There's nothing that suggests that Regulus can ignore information, because I mean, he literally speaks to characters and complain about how he doesn't want to hear them speak and stuff like that in the show and light novel. So maybe Infinite Void could transmit the endless information anyway and drive him insane rather than turn him into a vegetable. But who knows? It's really up to interpretation when it comes to how Infinite Void would interact with Regulus. So let me know what you guys think about that. Overall, I think Regulus could just one-shot Gojo and he's way more powerful. But if Gojo gets lucky, and I mean really lucky, he can get around Regulus's ability and win. Obviously though, Regulus is the person I'd bet on. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting the like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out, guys.